Let me paint you a picture. The wind's in your hair. You're laughing with the boys. There's the crackle of AKM gunfire in the distance. You're about to storm a bunch of coked up terrorists in a Soviet-era flying tank. Hey Alexa, you mind playing Miley Cyrus's Part in the USA for me? Gentlemen, welcome to Sierra Leone. Unless you're new to my channel, you're most likely aware with my obsession with the history of warfare in Africa. More specifically, it's probably going to have to do with South Africa, Rhodesia, and all the colonial interests of that warfare. And specifically, I also am obsessed with the movie Blood Diamond, particularly Danny Archer, who was a Rhodesian who would then go on to join the SADF. I believe at this point in the game I have made over 7 videos on the topic. It's kind of a lot, I'm sorry. Or am I? That's right, boys, I'm in it deep. I'm in it so deep that I even bought myself a Breitling Chrono Avenger that I don't have on for this video, sadly, because it's in the workshop getting repaired. I would dare say it's one of my more treasured possessions. I feel a little bit naked without it for this video, but we will persevere. And now in one of my favorite movies, that being Blood Diamond, it takes place in a country called Sierra Leone. And it takes place in the 90s, which was not a great time for Sierra Leone. In the movie, there is a scene where the mercenary group used a Mi-24 to mow down a bunch of RUF rebels. And what if I told you that scene in the movie was one of the most realistic in there? Because that actually happened, as the kids say, IRL. The crew, and specifically the pilot of the gunship, achieved legendary status in Sierra Leone. And if you know a thing or two about any of the wars in Africa, you probably know a thing or two about these guys. But it is a niche topic after all. And today I want to introduce you to the military personification of the meme, Unc Still Got It. Oh, I thought you were the RUF, but I know I caught you on the toilet, drinking your coffee, eating your beer. Make sure you like and subscribe and leave me a comment in the comment section down below. Those comments do mean a lot because I read them when I'm on the toilet, and it's like we're connected across the big old internet. Now, gentlemen, unlike Mr. Ellis, me and my crew cannot go 20 months without getting paid, so we have to thank the sponsors of this video. Not bad?
Liked it.
Americana Pipe Dream Apparel. Do you want to look cool? Do you want to look extra cool while wiping in your mom's basement? Then Americana Pipe Dream Apparel has you covered. Using code ADMIN, you get 10% off the entire store, such as night vision, knives, manuals, and e-bikes. Yeah, they may be pricey, but can you put a limit on having fun terrorizing your local HOA? I know I can. That's why I have to give a big thank you to Americana Pipe Dream Apparel. Not only are they fantastic young Zoomers arming the world with milsurp, but they're just a good time. It's a shame that Mr. Ellis didn't have NVGs while on the defense. But you know who else does? Optics Planet, the optics sponsor of the channel. Running low on ammo is not ideal, especially in Mr. Ellis's case, and especially in your case. That's why I have to thank Badlands Munitions, the ammo sponsor of Administrative Results. They have a whole bunch of cool rounds in their lineup. 85mm 5.56, SBR Optima I-762 by 51, and of course a plethora of 9mm that will get you to where you want to be when you're out there dumping lead on the flat range. Section 1, the Sierra Leone Civil War. Before we board the Hind, we have to give you a basic rundown of what's going on in Sierra Leone. Here's what happened in the shortest form possible.
What I hope is that she will be permitted to go on with her life.
The Civil War in Sierra Leone lasted from 1991 to 2002. It was the government of Sierra Leone versus the RUF, the Revolutionary United Front, and the RUF was backed by the Liberian forces. There's a lot of political layers to peel back, but I don't want yet again to spend hours on this. The gist is that the RUF attempted a coup on the Sierra Leonean government. They claim they were fighting for a better future, but that's pretty much what every violent militant group has been saying for centuries for their cause, so.
I want to be a leader for the people of Sierra Leone. I'm going to be the leader of the revolution.
The ensuing war would result in 70,000 casualties and 2.5 million people displaced, along with countless atrocities committed. Aside from outside help, the RUF relied on a vast diamond mining network to arm themselves. In a vicious circle of capitalism feeding the gun trade and vice versa, the RUF would use the diamond profits to buy guns and ammo, and then use those guns and ammo to get more diamond mines, and then use those diamond profits to get more guns and ammo, and so on and so forth. Tragically, one of the worst things that come out of this was the RUF recruiting child soldiers, and then indoctrinating them and giving them hard drugs and taking them into combat. Another point for our story is the reliance on mercenary groups in this war. The government of Sierra Leone spent heaps of cash on mercenary groups, most notably executive outcomes. If you know anything about this channel, you know that it used to be named Executive Outcomes, now it's Administrative Results because Executive Outcomes came back from the history books. Eben Barlow brought it back, and I didn't want to take the name from it, even though it's a sick name, his first, but now you get Administrative Results. The government of Sierra Leone was very much out of its depth in fighting the RUF. So that's where the mercenary groups of Executive Outcomes, along with others, come in. Executive Outcomes, as many of you know by now, was extremely effective at combating the RUF, with many of its former members being of very high-speed military service, most notably probably the 3-2 Battalion from the SADF. Also, you can take a wild guess where one of my favorite characters is from, the 3-2 Battalion. It's all intertwined, boys. It's all connected. We're not here to talk about Danny Archer, but we are here to talk about the mercenaries that played a key part in defending Sierra Leone. Although it's unrealistic to speculate about the outcome of the war without the intervention of the mercenaries, it's very safe to say it would have been a lot tougher without them. The war ended thanks to a bombing campaign of RUF camps, the expulsion of RUF members in Liberia, and the shutting down of the illicit diamond trade. Now, this all ties back in because in this video we're taking an even closer look at one of those mercenary groups and their tenure in Sierra Leone. Neal God-dang Ellis! Meet Neall Ellis. What a man. There is a saying in the line of work where you get paid to carry a gun. Fear the old man in a profession where men usually die young. And this saying is perfectly applied to Mr. Ellis. Colonel Ellis is of South African origin and made a name for himself long before his freelance career in the South African Air Force. He was awarded the Honoris Crux, the Honoris Cross, I think it would be called, in 1983. I'm sorry if I butchered that pronunciation. This is a South African military award for bravery, which he earned in Operation Super thanks to his actions in 1982. All, of course, taking place during the South African Border War. Ellis, as a pilot of an Alouette 3, located an enemy encampment and immediately came under fire. The Alouette 3 isn't really a tank of a helicopter, and it's in relative terms pretty easy to take down. Well, Colonel Ellis wasn't having none of that. According to the official report, Colonel Ellis's helicopter was shot at with SA-7s and RPG-7s, none of which hitting its target. Colonel Ellis came in very clutch, remaining in the battle, coordinating the attack from above. While dodging all that death, he was coordinating gunship fire along with the positioning of troops on the ground. If that did not earn him enough free beers for life, Ellis's technician, Sergeant Steve Ớ.TIA, would immediately start raining down fire on enemy troops that ambushed another LZ of theirs. Sergeant Ë.TIA successfully neutralized that assault, earning him, alongside Ellis, the Honoris Crux, or the Honoris Cross. I'm sorry yet again. In simple terms, Ellis is a badass because besides fighting the Rhodesian Bush War and the South African Border War, he would also fight in the First Congo War. Well, also the Angolan Civil War. He would also be in the war in Bosnia, also the Iraq War and the war in Afghanistan. But of course, for this video, we're more focused on his role in Sierra Leone. There, he was a contractor for Sandline, which along with Executive Outcomes was one of the largest mercenary groups in the country at the time. When he was signing that contract, little did Mr. Ellis know he was going to become such a legend amongst mercenary circles. The Hind! Ellis piloted the Mi-24 in Sierra Leone, also known under its NATO denominator as the Hind. This is a old bird by modern standards go, introduced in 1972. At this point in time that Ellis got his hands on it, it was barely old enough to buy itself a drink. Ellis singled out the Hind's ability to serve both as a gunship and a quasi-troop carrier as a unique ability amongst its peer of other rotary aircraft, I suppose. The Soviets who designed it called it the flying tank due to the difficulty it was of taking down. The Hind's rotor blades are resistant to 12.7mm and 50 cal projectiles, and the windscreens are also ballistic resistant. Although this isn't officially documented, Ellis swears by the windscreen's nature at stopping a 12.7mm round and keeping the crew safe. Comment below if we should test this out. Just YouTube. Gassing the crew out isn't an option either because the cabin is overpressured in the event of a biological or nuclear threat, though if a nuclear bomb goes off, you're probably already dead. Ellis probably appreciated the Hind's nature of being fast and maneuverable for its size, but I guarantee you he appreciated one aspect of it the most: its sheer firepower. The Hind can kill you in any way it wants. Air-to-air missiles, bombs, which is something you wouldn't usually expect from a helicopter, Gatling guns, autocannons, mounted guns, mine dispensers. It's actually probably easier to list all the ways that it can't kill you. Ellis says that back in his day, he could mount a universal pod underneath the pylons with a full-barreled 12-7 and two full-barreled 7.62mm machine guns. The way he puts it, with each weapon firing 4,500 rounds a minute along 6 different gun platforms equals 27,000 rounds per minute. That is a lot of lead. Ellis was also a magician. He wasn't good at making things reappear, but he was very good at making things disappear. Though in this scenario, you cannot have your cake and eat it too, for like America, the Hind loves its oil. According to Ellis, the Mi-24 burns 800 liters of fuel per hour. My God, man. Imagine the gas bill on that thing, dude. Who's gonna pay for this? Oh yeah, the government. That is 4 barrels for an hour of flight time, and the Hind can only store 1,600 liters of fuel, meaning that you really only have about 2 hours of total flight time. The Soviets who designed the Hind wouldn't even fly it too far off base due to that reason. Guys, there aren't that many military bases in Sierra Leone. Well, what's he gonna do? The way Mr. Ellis got around this was by having a vehicle with fuel follow them around, and they would stop and refuel using that, which is absolutely awesome. Logistics wins wars and buys you more whole. Interestingly, and this is completely unrelated to Colonel Ellis's Hind's crew, but a British Hind actually crashed in Sierra Leone in 2001. This was due to a double engine failure. The helicopter, carrying 3 passengers from an international military advisory training team, the mouthfuls of these acronyms, crashed into a paddy field just after taking off. 3 crew members and 2 passengers survived the crash with minor injuries, but sadly 1 passed away. This has nothing to do with Ellis, but it's kind of funny that the only Hind crash in Sierra Leone was not a combat-related Hind crash, which is just like a poetic, it's kind of poetic. Colonel Ellis and his crew's time in Sierra Leone was marked with cherished by the locals. As the kids say these days, they achieved GOAT status. The crew is quite diverse. Actually, you have, besides Ellis, a Ethiopian flight crew that maintained the helicopter, and a French door gunner along with a British door gunner. All the diversity quotas have been met. Ellis's time in Sierra Leone actually started off pretty rough. He got there after almost being killed in Zaire. For those of you that don't know, Zaire is the name of the Democratic Republic of Congo until 1997. When he first arrived there in 1995, he was contracted by Executive Outcomes, not Sandline. 2 years after the fall of President Mobutu Sese Seko, I had to read my notes. Sorry if I mispronounced that yet again. He had to escape Zaire on foot. Then Ellis signed with Sandline, flying the Mi-17 known as the HIP in Sierra Leone. When Sandline decided to pull out of that country in 1997, and we're going to stay on track because this could be a whole nother digression, Ellis chose to stay behind in Sierra Leone. Sandline apparently offered to pay the crew out, give them their bonuses, or let them have the helicopter. They chose the helicopter. The Mi-17 quickly sustained battle damage and was replaced by a Mi-24, which was purchased by the government of Sierra Leone. How does the government of Sierra Leone acquire an Mi-24, you may ask, and that is a great question. After the fall of the Soviet Union, there was what we call in the biz, a fire sale. And those Ruskies were selling Hinds left and right, and in even some cases giving them away for free. They were surplus to requirements, and Sierra Leone ended up snagging 2 of those bad boys for pretty cheap. A report from 2023 states that apparently Sierra Leone still has 2 Hinds in the inventory. So, that's an option. Ellis didn't have any formal training on the Hind, but it was apparently pretty similar to the Mi-17. And of course, he was also a pretty good helicopter pilot by this point in the game, so he picked it up pretty quick. In the beginning, the Hind exchanged gunfire with rebels who had never seen a gunship handled so well. It didn't take them long to realize that shooting an AKM at an Mi-24 is like trying to bring down a grizzly bear with a .22. It's just a bad idea. Later, Ellis would recall that when the rebels saw the Hind, that they would all scatter in fear. The RUF quickly assumed the strategy of hiding beneath trees, using the canopy to shield them from the eyes of Ellis, who wasn't keen on wasting ammo. One of their first major sorties was an attack on a rebel column that was approaching the town of Kanima. Fun fact, this is where the British story of the Hind crashing comes back into play, because that's where it would crash, in that same town years later. It's all tied together. When the Hind appeared in this scenario, the rebels started using women and children as human shields. The RUF made the women and children form a column, and then they surrounded that column, thinking that the Hind would not fire on them in fear of hitting the civilian targets. What the RUF rebels did not know is that the rocket pods are not harmonized. Ellis, of course, knows this, and so while flying very low to the road, he fires both of his rocket pods at the same time. This is actually wild to picture because as this is happening, the rebels scatter into the tree line on the left and the right, and while they're doing that, Ellis's rockets are veering left and right, and no civilians are harmed, and over 70 rebels are taken out. The crew all agree that the RUF wasn't particularly scary to them. The military of Sierra Leone wasn't very well drilled or disciplined, so obviously their opinion is going to be a little bit different, and Ellis did not speak very kindly about the military of Sierra Leone, saying that it doesn't take a lot to take those guys on. Now, the Hind's arguably most famous engagement was conducted by Ellis himself alone. Imagine this, it is nighttime, the city you are in is the capital of the government that is paying you to fight for them, and it's about to be overrun. You are completely surrounded by RUF troops. Small caliber fire echoes in the distance. Everyone's screaming, gangs are looting. Sheer chaos is taking place. The government is preparing to capitulate, and one of the commanders asks you to do something. You don't have NVGs and your crew can't go with you. What do you do? Well, if you're Colonel Ellis, it's just another day in the office and you fire up your Hind. Ellis decides to do it himself. He loads up the helicopter with rocket pods and takes off for the front lines. Once he got there, he would rocket the hell out of the RUF, which would successfully stop the attack. Ellis, with his armament, was very fond of hitting vehicles mounted with heavy weapons such as the Dishka. The RUF after this attack would regroup and go on to attack again, but yet again Ellis was there to stop them. It's absolutely a crazy thought to think like, all right, I'm gonna go pilot a Soviet-era helicopter, no night vision, and I'm going to stop not one but two attacks with my helicopter all by my lonesome. It's said that he took out and neutralized over 2,500 enemy combatants. Now the rebels would ultimately end up taking Freetown, and this was due to a mechanical failure of that Mi-24. It was temporarily grounded but was repaired, and Ellis was able to escape Freetown just in the nick of time. Soon after defending Freetown, Ellis would end up stopping the RUF from taking the town of Lunsar. Ellis explained that just the appearance of the helicopter was enough to break the momentum of the rebels' attack. He said, and I quote, "The gunship strikes the fear of God into the rebels. They run into the bushes as soon as they see it. In Africa, the man who makes the loudest noise wins the battle. The helicopter with all of his weapons and engine sure fits that bill." The Hind was as important for its psychological impact as it was for its physical impact. The psychological impact wasn't lost on civilians either. Unfortunately, many villagers would flee upon seeing the helicopter, fearing an attack from Ellis, even though Ellis says he would not attack civilian targets, which also kind of proves the effectiveness of the psychological impact of that helicopter, just how terrifying it is. Now, the crew of the Hind aren't really mercenaries in the conventional sense. For example, there was one point where the crew had not been paid for up to 20 months. Colton, would you mind if I didn't pay you for 20 months?
Dude, I'd be hungry.
I'm a bad merc. Ellis himself says that he does what he does because he wouldn't know what else to do, and that he enjoys the excitement of the job. The man loves the game for the game itself. This probably made the RUF just even hate him more. The impact of that Hind on the RUF was so monumental that they would send a lot of death threats his way and even put out a price on his head. The figure of $1 million is thrown around, which is a pretty big price to pay, and that's a lot of money given not only the inflation calculator, but where you're at in Africa. The RUF did manage to get a message to him. It said, if we capture you, we're going to cut your heart out and eat it, which is, oh, okay, do you guys have an Mi-24? You gotta catch me first. Ellis and his crew would then go on a propaganda run, dropping thousands of leaflets which say, and I quote, "RUF, this time we've dropped leaflets. Next time it'll be half-inch Gatling machine gun, or 57mm rockets, or 23mm guns, or 30mm grenades, or all of them." The most insane thing is that technically at this point, these were half-empty threats from Ellis. The Hind was running really low on ammo,
I need my bullets!
which is not good if people are trying to cut your heart out and eat it. The government of Sierra Leone was bleeding capital left and right, and money was getting kind of tight. Any normal person seeing this probably would have bounced out, but not Ellis. Without any ammo, he would still fly his Hind around using the sheer power of the rotary blades to flip trucks and vehicles, which I think is just fantastic. In case you're wondering what that feels like, we have a video. This is getting pretty gnarly, but Ellis, when running low on ammo, would just land on rebels and crush them with his helicopter. This could be one of those like take it with a grain of salt kind of things, but it came from the book Gunship Ace, Wars of Neal Ellis, Mercenary Pilot by A.J. Venter. Now, all of Ellis's efforts would not go unnoticed. He was still pretty dangerous to the RUF without ammo, and the British government took note and decided to start supplying him with ammo. This is actually how the crew ended up working alongside the British. Apparently and historically, Ellis and his crew were the first mercenary flight crew to work alongside with British forces in a guerrilla war. The Hind also played an important role when 11 British soldiers were taken hostage by the RUF. This is known as Operation Barras. I probably butchered that too. 12 men, one of which who was eventually killed, were on patrol when they were ambushed by the West Side Boys. What a name. It's an armed group in Sierra Leone that's very similar to the RUF. The British government negotiated release of 5 of the hostages, but the 6 still remained and negotiations weren't really getting anywhere. They then authorized an assault on the base where the prisoners were being held. The SAS spearheaded this operation along with the SBS, the Parachute Regiment, the 1st Battalion, and you guessed it, our boy Neal Ellis and his Hind. The Hind was on standby throughout the mission, not being used until the hostages were rescued, at which point when they were rescued, the Hind was let loose and rained down terror on the encampment. We had some good fun in those days. Now that is nostalgia. That is not PTSD. Ellis developed a reputation for being fearless in Sierra Leone. On one occasion he said that if you want to do this job, you can't let it get to you. If it does, you should go home and work a 9 to 5. He is also known for his hard and fast approach on his personal initiative. When advising another pilot on how to approach the RUF, he said, smack them again, and then hit the just once more to be sure. Ellis don't mess around, dude. All of this goes to show that Ellis and his glorious Hind don't hold back when they're fighting in Africa, and this ties into my last story. Now take this with plenty of reservation because it's all based on rumors, and it might straight up be lies. Apparently after the fall of Freetown, Ellis was stockpiling guns and ammo and provisions inside of the Hind in case it went down. He himself was willing to fight a one-man guerrilla war in case it did actually go down, which is, the guy just doesn't quit. After the war in Sierra Leone was finally over, Ellis was spotted in the war in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq. He would eventually even be spotted taking on ISIS at the ripe old age of 67. Where is he today? I actually have no idea. According to his LinkedIn profile, Ellis is very much alive and kicking. So Mr. Ellis, if you were out there somewhere and you happen to stumble across this video, just know that your work is very appreciated and that you have many admirers. Also, if you do come across this, we would love to know if the stories are as true or untrue as possible. So we appreciate that. Gentlemen, this is one of those stories that I find very fascinating. Africa itself is always such a very interesting place of stories and conflict, and this one really spoke to me. I think the actions of Mr. Ellis are extremely brave, and I think they're worthy of telling and capturing that moment in time. I got nothing else for you. I'll catch you all on the flip.